So on this day, I was talking in the Telegram how the 4H was in a rotation, and we were at the bottom of that rotation. We're near the highs, but we are just kind of going back and forth. And if you look at the TPO chart, the top of kind of that profile there, you see that thick red line. That's the value area, the previous week's value area high. And they were kind of using that. If you turn that into a composite profile there of this rotation that they're doing, they were using that as kind of the high point, and then they're using that 250 as the low point. And then if you look on those thick green lines on the TPO chart, that was the previous day's value area, and you had that thick yellow line as the POC of that day. So right at the beginning, you can see they were the ETH went right to it. You can see that on the just to the left there. And they would come down and they kept buying it in this low volume node area where I have it highlighted at the bottom of the chart. And they were pushing up into that value area. They were rejecting it. And they'd push back up in there. They would reject it again. But, obviously when they kept buying it down here and they wanted to go up there. So, once they finally got through it, they were showing that intent by, keep going after it. And they finally got through it in the C period. And then you see that D period come back and tested that level. So they were defending it there. And then they pushed up and they hit that 300 level and they took out the POC. And once they got past that, they made a little effort to finish that rotation. But then they come back and I talked about them defending that 300 level. And they did a little bit of a fake out where they come back and they tested it. And if you would have bought that, you can see the F period went up and then you would have closed that when it wasn't going to make it. But then that G period, that's one of my favorite ways to get into a trade like that, when it sweeps that, the way it swept that 300 and, the POC level there. You just basically look for that sweep and then your stop can pretty much go underneath that. And, you should start to see a push out of that level. If it kind of pumps up just like it did, the F period went, that was a pretty good rotation there. But if this trade isn't going to work, it wouldn't really get as high as it is now. It would kind of start to fall back on itself. So then the whole point of this trade was to finish that rotation through the, first of all, the daily value area, but then primarily finish that rotation in the 4H chart that would go to the top of that, that range where that thick red line is there. And then if you get past that, you had, I'm just trying to finish that 4H rotation. And you do have yesterday's high up there, but I'm using that as kind of to trade within that movement. I'm not necessarily trying to get to that high in this situation, because you had the finish of the daily rotation there. You had the 4H previous week's value area high there. That was kind of the high of the edge of that rotation. So I'm just trying to, complete that rotation. And obviously, you could take some off, at these levels, but it just felt complete by the time we got to there. That's all I wanted to do. So I was using the draw of that high from, the day before, to complete this. And you can see it. I mean, it's pushing pretty good. So as long as we get over these highs, you could have, if I had more contracts, I may have taken one in here, when we got to these highs. But the way this is moving, if you look at that delta, and it just keeps, it keeps pumping here. So I felt pretty confident. And everybody can see these levels. So, that's the other thing is, once they got this far, I thought there's no way they're not going to push. It does happen and it can happen, but, just look at that delta pumping. And it would, the levels are so obvious. I thought that they would want to, finish this. And then you also had that, the high. So some people are looking at that high. Maybe they're not even looking at the value area, the levels there, the value area highs there. And then I also had these set to front run that just because I thought there would be a lot of, uh, you know, like I said, a lot of people were looking at this. So I thought there'd be a lot of front running. As soon as we get over this high and we get close, I'll take one. That looks like perfect price action. How it come back and tested. It actually tested that VA high there. If you look at the TPO, the volume profile on the TPO chart, we took the first one off there. And I thought if we pushed right through here, I would try holding this last one. But I changed my mind. It's just why. And it did move up to that high, and, but then it come right back. So I wasn't, did I really miss out on that much? I'd rather just take this off and kind of see what happens from here.